Yesterday I had the enormous pleasure of being invited to Sarum's studio, which is a portrait painting school in Salisbury that is run by my friend and incredible artist, Nick Beer, who has also written an expansive book on everything you need to know about drawing and painting portraits, including information about materials, mixing colours, and techniques from different ages. I will leave the information below about where you can find the book, and I highly recommend you pick yourself up a copy. In this video, I'm going to discuss the principles of drawing from life. As you can see, we set up the paper on its board next to the sitter, and this means that you are going to get the drawing, or if you're doing a painting for that matter, you're going to get the right scale of life. A life-size scale. So when you're working on a standard sheet of paper around 20 inches by 30 inches, allow about 3 or 4 inches between the top of the head and the top of the paper, so the chin is more or less central. Choose a pose that is comfortable for the sitter and looks natural. A 3/4 angle with the shadow part of the face away from the viewer usually works well. These sorts of poses were preferred by the old masters, and they work well. I'll show you some examples here. We've got this very famous Velázquez, possibly self-portrait, that hangs in the Met, and you can see the shadow falling away. Rembrandt's famous self-portrait that hangs in Washington, D.C., with the shadow of his face falling away. And this is John Singer Sargent's portrait in the National Portrait Gallery, with a 3/4 light on the face, as you can see. So begin by marking the top of the head, and then make a mark for the chin, and then make a mark for the brow line and the tip of the nose, drawing the initial depiction of the shapes with simple lines. This establishes the 3 major divisions of the head, which are hairline to the brows, and then brows to the tip of the nose, and then the tip of the nose to the chin, which obviously varies from sitter to sitter. It doesn't need to be particularly refined. All you're trying to do is just get the right scale of the features of the face. Next, establish what is called the Van Dyck Z. This is the Z shape. I'm saying Z like an American. The Van Dyck Z, or Van Dyck Z, the Z shape described by the length and the angle of the brow, and then the bridge of the nose, and then the base of the nose, making a Z shape. As you can see clearly here, I'll show you some examples. These are 3 classic Anthony Van Dyck portraits that I'm showing you, and in each you can see clearly defined the Van Dyck Z or the Van Dyck Z in each of the portraits. And this really helps defining the features, the rest of the features on the face. Develop the drawing to the best of your ability by drawing in the outline first, then the shadow line and shapes of the face. Work by looking at the sitter or the object you're drawing as a whole. Try not to work on each feature of the face in a piecemeal manner, hoping it will all come together at the end. It's almost impossible to make a series of details seen in isolation work together as a whole. The length of the nose, for example, can only be properly understood when seen in context to the whole face. The sooner you establish the shapes, the sooner you can begin to make adjustments. So work at a steady pace that you get comfortable with. This whole process took about 2.5 hours with a few breaks. In an ideal world, you need about 12 feet to walk back and forth to your drawing or painting. If you're doing a portrait painting, all of these same principles apply. You want to observe the sitter or object from a distance. It's the only way to understand how the shapes and features work in context with each other. If you ever see an old portrait, like this one, for example, as you can see, the hands are slightly too small for the rest of the body, and the face and the nose is far too big on the face. And this is usually because they hadn't worked out how to view the sitter from a distance and get the proportions right. And they were usually sitting in front of their canvas. And so this created the wrong proportions. The nose often looked too big and the hands too small. It's difficult to determine features without also taking into consideration the shadow shapes. So map out the shadow line and mass in the shadows sooner rather than later. Only then will you see how successfully you've transcribed the essential shapes and proportions. And remember, you can rub out and adjust anything you want as you go along. This is your work of art, no one else's. You are in charge. So once you're happy with the larger framework of the face, introduce smaller planes and tones. But remember, little shapes and values are less important than the bigger shapes and values. You always want to keep walking back and looking at the larger context of the face as a whole. If you get into any difficulties, always go back to checking the Van Dyck Z, and if it's not correct, then the whole face will be off and it will be almost impossible to locate the other features. So it's important to keep checking that the Van Dyck Z works and you're happy with it. The sitter will move, and this is fine. This is okay. Just be open to the variations. This is what makes a great work of art, the different vibrations of the face as you observe them in time and space. Try and establish the highlights in the eyes as early as you can, because it will help you with placing the eyes on the face. Some painters like to add highlights at the end as a way of magically giving life to a portrait, only to find out that the highlights are too far apart or too close together. And if they have added the highlights earlier, they would have avoided this problem. So try and relate the highlights in the eyes to the tip of the nose, which forms a triangle specific to the sitter. The most difficult part of the face to draw or paint and get right are the lips. John Singer Sargent said that a portrait is a likeness with something wrong with the lips. So the lower lips usually fuse imperceptibly with the surrounding flesh tones, and the top lip is essentially a shadow shape that you're trying to draw. Try and avoid drawing attention to the nostril shadow. Squint your eyes and it will become lost within the shadow shape. Try and draw the shadow shape below the tip of the nose as a whole. With your highlights, try and establish a hierarchy of those on the lips and the nose being less than the brighter, sharper highlight in the eyes, which also controls the viewer's gaze and focuses the view on the eyes. When you are developing the hair, try and convey its general form and try and follow how it works with the shape of the head or the cranium. Imagine the hair as a solid mass and use the light and shadow to describe it in terms of mass and texture. And try and soften the hairline into the forehead. When you're looking at a person's head, the hairline into the face is a soft transition, not a sharp transition, so make it soft. A major objective when working on a portrait is to convey the architecture of the head. Think how a sculptor uses the larger planes and masses to characterize likeness. As Sargent said, it's impossible to rework a head when the understructure is wrong. So use these basic principles that I'm explaining here to get the understructure of the head right, and you will be on the right road. Give it a go and have fun doing it. Let me know how it goes in the comments below, and subscribe for more videos coming soon to Todd Hunter Gallery on this YouTube channel. I will leave all the information about where you can find Nick Beer's book on portraiture below, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much for watching.